Hello, hello. Uta here with yesterday's last roses, which we'll get slightly in the screen. And my last, I think some of my last dahlias there, and just I've got some buds still coming out from those immortality irises. And I now am doing part two, revealing who Dr. Connie from my memoir is. She is Dr. Christine Connie, nickname Wheeler. And it's actually, I'm really finding there's a lot to discover here in between the lines and especially with the captured language. Now, I for for my to be rescheduled appearance on Megyn Kelly, I bought some makeup, and you could tell me if it looks pretty dumb. I think I'm not so good at applying it as when I was as a aspiring professional dancer 40 years ago. Um, but anyway, please feel free to tell me. Um, I don't think there's anything that I can do about my old lady crepey skin. I can wear a turtleneck to cover my lines on my neck. I'm kind of proud of just not caring at the age of almost 68. I'm just kind of proud of not caring anymore. I don't care. I remember the first gray hair that I got. I think I was 37 or 38, and I was hopping mad. I was so mad, which is not sensible because my father went gray quite early. But, my hair was that kind of red back then, and now it looks sort of blonde, I guess, because I've got so much white in there. Anyway, enough about looks. So, okay, so just to kind of back up a little bit to paragraph 4, Dr. Wheeler says, having knowledge of such a diagnosis, this is transsexual, gender dysphoria, all those things. Please go back to my previous part 1 video if you want to, have continuity with this. But okay, she's said things about the diagnostic manual, the diagnosis, and then she says having knowledge of such a diagnosis understandably requires some background as to the condition's etiology. She doesn't mention Dr. John Money, Dr. Volkmar Sigush, or Alfred Kinsey, who are all child sexual molesters and um, and are in the early etiology of the condition. Okay, what it means to an individual's life in general, how this condition will affect job performance, implications in parenting offspring, and primarily the application of this condition and the adjustments required to best benefit both Ms. Neddy and all other family members. Now, what I want to point out is that the importance of the mother of young children, our children were at that time 5 and 8. And they were expressing a great deal of trauma. They felt more free to express it with me, their mother, because I didn't change the subject and shut them up the way Nettie did, because the children told me about that. Of primary importance, this is paragraph 5, of primary importance to understand is that gender identity disorders or gender dysphoria or transsexualism, while quite rare a medical condition and although known throughout history, has been treated medically in this country specifically for over 40 years. I read this paragraph in the previous one. And she says the thing about birth error, and as a birth phenomenon, patients have an awareness of their condition from as far back as they can remember, and this condition remains throughout a person's lifetime. So this just can't be, because earliest memory is in the sensory motor stage, and what we remember is sort of like impressionistic images, and then what we do is use our language that is developed in later childhood and in adulthood with the filled in context of adult family members or other older family members telling us about that event that we remember. And so this idea that a 3-year-old, which is sort of earliest memory, that's how old I was for my earliest memories, a 3-year-old cannot express in their linguistic developmental stage that their body is wrong and something's wrong and I've been wrong since birth. And these Olson Kennedy, Mark Marcy Bowers type people will say, oh, well, the child is trying to express this by playing with toys associated with the opposite sex, which would only be, a social conditioning, and grasping at their clothes or something. Like a child could say to you, don't put this one on me, I want, my sister's dress or something. So none of paragraph 5 makes any sense. Okay, then we have paragraph 6. This is like the new part. Since from the very start of a person's awareness of this condition in themselves, the phenomenon is confusing and not understandable to them. Okay, now she's starting to make sense. And unacceptable to those around them. Okay, actually, if you are responding to this as a sensible adult, you distract the child, you look into, is something happening to them that might make them want to not be their sex, such as sexual abuse or physical abuse or verbal abuse that's related to her as a girl or him as a boy. So this whole business, unacceptable to those around them, that is overlaying this projection, her projection of what society says. And probably it's because she knows that it's a sexual fetish and that the rest of us are really, it's off-putting. Okay. The person feels that they must keep it a secret and may try for years to suppress it in the hopes that it will eventually go away. However, the suppression does not cause it to go away. Well, Dr. Wheeler, as I explained to you regarding Sam K., who used to call himself Maya K., he detransitioned after 25 years. And Dr. Stephen B. Levine, no longer affirming psychiatrist, has said that patients of his, a male patient of his, came to him 30 years after having the surgeries and said, I completely detransitioned. And in fact, one of the trans widows in my data said her husband went on to marry 2 more times and then completely detransitioned. California. Okay. Paragraph 7. An individual does not have a choice about being born with a disorder of gender identity, and there is no way to rid themselves of such a condition. Okay? Refer back to what I just said about Maya K. deciding, no, I'm Sam K. now, even 25 years later. This is a complete malpractice on the part of the psychologist, psychiatrist, and doctors because they did no long-term follow-up studies, except Paul McHugh, who was in charge of the Johns Hopkins program. And you can look up, he closed down the so-called gender clinic at Johns Hopkins. It was probably in the late 1970s or in the 1980s, because he did a follow-up and he found that People who had opted not to do so-called transition by surgeries and hormones and all this did not seem that unhappy. And the mostly men who did have the same operations as Nettie and take estrogen did not seem happier than people who opted not to have this treatment. And the pink mist land ideology vilifies Dr. Paul McHugh. I think he was a psychiatrist. And he has a very bad, say, Wikipedia listing. So that's what they do. It says having the condition is not a choice, but choices can be made about how to live with it in this world during one's lifetime. There are certainly a wide variety of choices that can be made, but the one choice that is not open to people with this condition is the choice to do nothing about it. Now, what I asked Nettie to do, I'm going to end here with in the middle of paragraph 7, and part 3 will be paragraph 7 and going into the next few paragraphs. First of all, Dr. Christine Connie Wheeler developed the reputation of being good at ritual conditioning and coercive control of the wives, and thus, in quotes, keeping the marriages together. And I was told by her underling, Ruth Makayla, Ruth the charlatan, that the breakup of the marriage is my fault. She also, Wheeler says that also. So there is already in 1996 a very well established misogyny and violation of women's rights. I have a lot of weeding and a lot of daffodil bulb planting to do, and so I'm going to put this out of my mind and finish out my day outside. I hope you do too. Please share this. Go ahead, and if this lady is on X, go ahead and share it. It's her words. She can't do anything to me. And, oh, yes, Griffin Sean Sivret, who is deceased of sepsis post a so-called phalloplasty. And after something like a dozen surgeries to fix it so that she could not only urinate standing up, but so that she could not have to have a catheter and a colostomy bag. This was at Boston Children's Hospital. She was diagnosed at the age of 14 and then went through that medicalized route. And so she died. She's individual number 2 on our dead names list. God rest her soul.